why does Clarence Thomas say he doesn't understand diversity? He's married to a white woman.
No, but
isn't that diversity?
That's not. This is wait, but the point that.
All right, friends, I survived. I am out of the Supreme Court. NBC just declared that it will be the death of affirmative action if this case is won by the plaintiffs. And let me just tell you a little bit about my own process in there. By the second case, which was Harvard, we had some of the justices just on fire, and they really pointed out some of the blatant actions that have happened where Asian kids get lower scores on personality and have to have much higher SAT scores in order to get into the school. So this is my final count. If you can see it right there. It's going to be hard to read, sorry. All right, can you see it there? So I put staunchly against racism. The results are Chief Justice Roberts, Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Kavanaugh. They spoke very fiercely, challenging Harvard and UNC Chapel Hill.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about affirmative action, as it looks like the Supreme Court is about to give us another W on fighting racism in this country, okay? Because that is what affirmative action is, regardless of how the left wants to use mental gymnastics to try to convince us that it's not. It is racism. It is systemic racism against Asians mostly and whites. And a group of Asian students sued UNC Chapel Hill and Harvard University for their alleged discriminatory practices that has resulted in Asians not being judged on the same standards as everybody else because they're assumed to be smarter, which in my opinion, you could argue is a racist assumption, right? So that being said, we're not going to get into the nitty gritty in regards to what's going on with this case, the specific details. Although, as of right now, from what I'm reading, it doesn't sound like it's going too good for Harvard and UNC. I think this is going to be a conservative W. But let's listen to this excerpt of Clarence Thomas that went viral because he questioned what is diversity.
I've heard the word diversity quite a few times, and I don't have a clue what it means. It seems to mean everything for everyone. And I'd like you first, you did give some examples in your opening remarks, but I'd like you to give us a specific definition of diversity in the context of the University of North Carolina. And I'd also like you to give us a clear idea of exactly what the educational benefits of diversity at the University of North Carolina would be.
Yes, Your Honor. So first, we define diversity the way this court has in its court precedents, which means a broadly diverse set of criteria that extends to all different backgrounds and perspectives and not solely limited to race. And there's a factual finding in this record, PEDAP 113, that there are many different diversity factors that are considered as a greater factor in our admissions process than race. And so we value diversity of all different kinds and all the ways that people differ in our society. On the educational benefits question, a racially diverse and a diversity of all kinds leads to, quote, a deeper and richer learning environment, leads to more creative thinking and exchange of ideas, and critically reduced bias between people of different backgrounds and not solely different racial backgrounds.
But you still haven't given me the educational benefits. I didn't go to racially diverse schools. But there were educational benefits. And I'd like you to tell me expressly, when a parent sends a kid to college, that they don't necessarily send them there to have fun or feel good or anything like that. They send them there to learn physics or chemistry or whatever they're studying.
Yeah, so it doesn't sound like Clarence Thomas is buying into the alleged educational benefits of diversity, right? Which again, I'm having a hard time thinking of what are the actual educational benefits of diversity. So yeah, it looks like Clarence Thomas, the conservative court, is going to take a sledgehammer to affirmative action. And of course, the woke revolutionaries, the race pimps of liberal media like Eli Mastall, they're having a meltdown over this.
So the case the Supreme Court decided to take up is fun. They took up one case from Harvard and one case from UNC, but it's fundamentally the same case. It's fronted by a group of Asian American students. And the argument is that Asian Americans are discriminated against by elite universities because of affirmative action. The real issue, though, Mark, is that these Asian American students behind the scenes are being put up to this by a group of white people, mainly led by a white lawyer named Ed Blum. But what I always say is that their problem ain't with me, and that's because the enemy has been chosen for them by the forces of whiteness and white supremacy. They will let Clarence Thomas, who has been against affirmative action from the very beginnings of his career, they will let him write the opinion outlawing affirmative action. Clarence Thomas, for his 30 years on the court, he has written very few majority opinions that have changed the law in any way. He's too extreme, basically, to get majority opinions of import. But this will be one. They will let him, in an extreme way, outlaw affirmative action.
Massa, we sick.
I mean, it's going to be a very ruckus opinion. It's going to be a very ruckus opinion.
Yeah, so as you guys heard there, one of the prominent race hustlers, race pimps in the mainstream liberal media, Eli Mastall, is essentially waving the white flag. Okay, he knows what's about to happen. He's claiming that the Asians that are suing over this, essentially they're being led by white supremacists. Right, that is literally what he's arguing. And he's also taking shots at Clarence Thomas, essentially saying that he ain't black, saying silly terms like masses, we sick, and, you know, he's a ruckus. This is a ruckus opinion. Again, you know, things that low-functioning black individuals say about high-functioning, high-intelligence black individuals who do not think the same as the progressive left. Again, classic stuff. So with that being said, I want to react to people just as ignorant as Eli Mastall, and that is the cackling hens on the View and their take over on this affirmative action situation, as they're panicking as well too, because Clarence Thomas again is about to essentially outlaw affirmative action. And I'll take this opportunity to have a more general conversation about affirmative action as well too. So let's go ahead and get into this.
Asian Americans that are a part of this, and there's something called a person.
I think they're the few.
Well, yeah, and it can be started by a guy like that, but it doesn't disrupt the facts that there's a personality rating that Asian Americans are having trouble with in regards to a cultural difference. I wouldn't even say it's discriminatory. It's downright racist.
Yeah, so what she's talking about is that when they give an assessment of a candidate, you have an academic scoring kind of system going on, and then you have something that's non-academic. And when it comes to the personality scoring or the personal score, okay, things that are not academic, Asians score really low. And essentially the argument is that that is discriminatory towards Asians, okay?
Judging them on a personality score, and if you win on just test scores, which, by the way, people think high school grades first, then standardized test scores, 43% of these elite institutions would be Asian. So it does, the problem with the civil rights movement was to say don't discriminate against race because discriminating hurts a race. Fixing it with the same discrimination is going to hurt some other race.
That's not what happened. Let me explain. You know, unless you're saying white people are discriminated against.
No.
Well, I mean, they are, right? Particularly straight white men who are also not legacy emissions. Okay, so I mean, you know, if you're a straight white male, and I'm saying straight because, you know, if you say you're gay on your application and your essay, you're probably going to get brownie points for being LGBTQ, right? That's one of the infinity stones of wokeness that you can have to improve your chances of getting into an elite university. But let's just say, again, you are a, you know, straight white male and you're not legacy, but you're above average, right? On paper, you should be able to get into this institution. However, again, you're behind the 8 ball because you don't get the benefit of being legacy like a lot of other students get. A lot of white students get that benefit, rich ones, okay? And you don't get the benefit of, again, affirmative action when it comes to non-whites and women as well, too. So again, if you're a straight white male from a middle-class background, you got a lot to prove. when it comes to college admissions, and Asians have even more to prove. Okay, they have it even harder. So again, if you're Asian or a straight white male, you got a whole lot to prove compared to everybody else in regards to getting into some of these elite universities.
Well, I'm saying Asian Americans in this instance.
Well, here's if you are someone who says these tests don't really reflect us, this is what we did when we talked about the tests that were given in American schools. Said this didn't really reflect how I grew up. You're asking questions I don't have any understanding of.
Okay, so again, I hate this. Again, this is an insult to black people and our intelligence, because what she's arguing here is that, well, black people do bad on standardized tests because we can't relate to the test, right? We don't understand the question, right? When you guys understand, I mean, these tests are about mathematical reasoning, reading comprehension, vocabulary, right? They're about things that are academic. I don't understand how somebody's supposed to relate to a test. Okay, are they supposed to ask a math question like, hey, how many homies did Raekwon shoot up this weekend? Right? Again, is that how you're supposed to relate to black folks? Okay, is that what they're talking about? Or are they saying things like, well, you know, black people, our vocabulary is not expansive enough. We don't know these words. When the reality is that that's not discriminatory towards black people. That's actually discriminatory towards low-income people, because SAT scores and income correlate. They strongly correlate. The reason why is because kids of higher incomes from families that have higher incomes, more than likely, their parents are going to be more focused on their child being educated, and they're going to put more resources behind their child's education, including SAT, ACT prep. Okay? And SAT scores or standardized test scores are the best predictors of college success. So again, the problem here is not a race problem. It's really an income problem. Now, how do we fix that? Well, I think one, it starts in the household. You have to have personal responsibility. Parents need to understand the cost of having children. Don't have children unless you can afford to give them the best education. But I do understand in certain circumstances, you do have to deal with the public education system, which is a mess, right? Democrats are more focused on, you know, black people learning about racism, about gender, about sex in school, and they're not worried about black people, you know, expanding their vocabulary, learning more math, reading, things that people on the right want to focus on. So again, the solution here is school choice. School choice, and I think also potentially trying to, you know, require kids take these standardized tests, prep classes, like actual serious classes, so that they can be prepared if they want to go to college. But also part of the solution is that understanding that some people are not necessarily going to be super book smart in the sense that they're going to do well on these tests. They're intelligent in other ways. They're intelligent with their hands. They're intelligent with, you know, their creativity. Okay, they can actually learn other skills that can help them become employed and to make money and climb the socioeconomic ladder. The problem is that our schools are not efficient. We don't actually really track kids into the best path for their career, whether that is to go to college or to be like, you know what, you don't need to go to college. You need to go to a trade school, right? You don't need to worry about taking the SAT or ACT, whatever. Just go to trade school. You're better with your hands. You're better with learning these types of skills rather than going to college. So again, there's a lot of problems here. However, the problem here is not that black people are too dumb. The problem is that people need to take personal responsibility for how they raise their kids and the education that their kids get, and putting resources and investment and time into making sure that their kids get a good education. That will solve the disparity problem when it comes to SAT scores, ACT scores, GPA, college admissions. Again, what's not being talked about here when it comes to affirmative action is the responsibility of the parent when it comes to educating their children and making sure they're prepared for this type of stuff. That matters a lot. A lot of solutions to these problems is in the household.
Right. The key then is to adjust what you're doing. It's adjusting the standardized test. It is not stopping affirmative action, because once that happens, someone can then say, well, you know, we have 3 Asian American students. We've got enough. See, they can't do that. They can't say, oh, we have 3 women. We can't do
and
that.
what I think
The big picture of affirmative action, it is there to help people who would not normally be able to get in, not just on their merit, because folks who were applying to these schools had the grades, had everything, and they still weren't accepted. I'm talking about women.
The Supreme Court has indicated they would consider socioeconomic differences because clearly education is not equal in this country.
The problem with that is that's a failed experiment. In California in 1998, California passed, I believe it was called Proposition 209, that banished affirmative action. The very next year, the number of California Black and Latino first-year students plunged by nearly half at UCLA and UC Berkeley, and it has continued to fail precipitously since 1998.
That's not a failed experiment. That is an indication of a larger societal problem, probably a more cultural problem, probably a problem with our public schools, probably a problem with our education system. That is what that is indicative of. It's not indicative that California is wrong. No, they're not wrong. They're right. We should be doing college admissions based off merit. That's what we should do. That is going to ensure that we have the most academic integrity that we can have in academia in the university system. That's the way that it should be. We should have the best performing students go to the best schools. This is how you compete globally, right? This is how you compete on the world stage.
Diversity question
taking
comes
the
in.
race out is a failed experiment.
Why does Clarence Thomas say he doesn't understand diversity? He's married to a white woman.
No,
Isn't that diversity?
This is the wait, but the point that you're touching on, Sonny, is important. Justice Brown said in her explanation, aren't other things taken into consideration? Like if you're a parent, if you're a vet, if you're the first one to go to college. She was even bringing up that diversity is different. When you speak, I think what he's saying is this diversity only racial diversity?
But it's,
is that what they're talking about?
That's all this man is talking about. That's all
he wants to take that
up.
piece out, and that's an important piece.
Yes.
Of
And just
a
real
person.
quick, what I think we can't lose.
Yeah. So, I mean, we all know what's about to happen. They know what's about to happen. I don't think that Whoopi actually knew what she was talking about during that segment. But, yeah, I mean, I think that Black people, Latino people, whoever, right? People that, you know, the left claims are going to get left behind because affirmative action is going to be, you know, overturned. I don't think that they need a booster sheet. I believe that we're smart enough to perform based off our own merits. However, again, parents have to take responsibility for their kids' education and making sure that they are prepared to be able to compete and to get into these institutions. It's not that Asians are inherently smarter than everybody else. It's just that their culture is geared in a way in which they do that with their kids. They plan their kids' futures from the day that they're born and track them into the best schools. They do what they got to do for their kids to succeed academically. That is what is missing. That is the disparity that needs to be addressed. It's a culture problem, not a race problem. And people should not be punished because of their race when, again, the problem is not race. It is actually culture. It's culture, personal responsibility. But again, this is not a conversation that the left wants to have. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.